When my husband's family invited me to a surprise family gathering, I didn't think much of it until I got there. That's when they handed me divorce papers and said, with ice in their voices, "Sign these or you'll regret it." I looked around at the faces I used to call family, smug, cold, certain they had the upper hand. I smiled. Then, cool as ever, I reached into my bag, pulled out a thick envelope of my own, and placed it on the table. "Actually, I have a surprise for you too." And that's when the room flipped. But let me rewind a bit. Because this wasn't just some random family drama. It had been building for a long, long time. It started with a text from my husband's sister, Julia. Now, Julia and I were never close. From the beginning, she treated me like an outsider. Someone she tolerated because her brother married me, not someone she ever tried to get to know. Every message I ever got from her was either a complaint, a correction, or some passive-aggressive note passed through her from their mom. So when I saw her name pop up on my phone, my gut reaction was instant unease. "Hey, we're having a small family gathering this Sunday at Mom's house. It's important. Be there at 3 p.m. It's a surprise. So don't tell Matt. Just show up." "No. Hey, how are you?" "No. Hope you can make it?" Just an order. I showed the message to my best friend Claire over coffee the next morning. She stared at my phone like it was cursed. "That sounds weird," she said slowly. "Why wouldn't Matt know about it?" Good question. My husband, Matt, was always ridiculously close to his family. Like, call his mom every day, update his sister on everything kind of close. So if his family was planning something, anything, he would usually be the first to know. Always. So when I got a message from his sister Julia, telling me to show up to a surprise family gathering and to not tell Matt about it, yeah, something felt off. My first thought was, maybe it was something serious. An intervention? A medical thing? Maybe someone was sick and they wanted to talk to me first. My brain tried to find the most compassionate reason possible. Because as much as I had my issues with that family, they were still Matt's people. But my gut wasn't buying it. I texted back simply, "Sure. See you then." I didn't tell Matt. Not because I was hiding it, but because I needed to figure out what this was before dragging him into something weird. I wanted to walk in with clear eyes and a calm head. Sunday came. I drove out to his mother's house, a big, elegant old home in one of those quiet, high-end neighborhoods in Charleston, South Carolina. The kind of house with high ceilings, antique furniture, and an eerie stillness that never quite goes away. Even in the heat of summer, that place always felt cold. As soon as I walked through the door, I knew. This wasn't a casual get-together. This wasn't even remotely friendly. Every single one of them was there. His mom, his dad, Julia, his two brothers, even the aunt and uncle who lived 2 states away. They were all seated in the living room like a freaking tribunal. Not a word was spoken. Just expectant, unreadable stares. And there it was, right in the middle of the coffee table. A folder. The air was thick, too still, too quiet. Like the room was holding its breath. "Sit down," Matt's mother said, her tone sharp and precise, like she expected obedience without question. I didn't move. I stood by the doorway, arms crossed, taking in the scene. Every chair occupied, every set of eyes on me. The whole family, seated like a damn boardroom. Except this wasn't a meeting. It was an ambush. "What's going on?" I asked, scanning their faces. No one answered right away. Then Matt's father, Robert, leaned forward and picked up the folder on the coffee table. He opened it slowly like he was about to deliver a sermon, then slid the papers across the table toward me. "We need you to sign these," he said, calm and matter of fact. "It's for the best." I stepped forward and glanced down. My name. His name. Legal jargon. Page after page of legalese. At the top, petition for dissolution of marriage, divorce papers. I blinked, trying to process, and then let out a disbelieving laugh, sharp and breathy. "Are you serious right now?" His mother straightened in her chair, smoothing the skirt over her knees like this was just another Sunday lunch. "We've thought long and hard about this," she said coolly. "And it's clear you're not a good fit for this family. You don't respect our values, you don't support Matt's ambitions, and, let's be honest, you've become a distraction to his future." I stared at her. A distraction? Julia leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees, a smirk tugging at the corner of her mouth. "Let's not pretend you didn't see this coming," she said. "You've never really belonged here. We just figured out a way to handle it that's clean, quiet, no drama. That way Matt doesn't have to be burdened." My jaw tightened. Burdened? They were doing this without him, deciding for him, cutting me out like I was the problem and pretending it was a mercy. I scanned the room again. These people, his family, weren't just nudging me toward the door. They had already packed my bags and were waiting for me to thank them for it. I shook my head slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. "Where is Matt?" Robert shifted in his seat. "He's not here. We didn't want to involve him until it's all settled. This way, he doesn't have to deal with the stress of it all." I raised a hand, cutting him off. "So let me get this straight," I said, pacing forward. "You called me here, sat me down like I'm being disciplined, drafted up divorce papers without even telling Matt, and now you expect me to just sign them? Because you decided this is for the best?" That's when I couldn't help but smirk. The tension in the room was so thick, you could cut it with a knife. I reached into my bag, pulled out a folder of my own, and placed it onto the coffee table with a soft thunk. "Actually," I said, my voice steady but laced with a bit of challenge, "I have a surprise for you too." They all stared at the folder like it was about to explode. The room felt like it was holding its breath. Matt's father, Robert, was the first to react. His eyes flicked between me and the folder, and his hand trembled slightly as he reached for it. He opened it and started flipping through the pages. With every turn, his face reddened more, his breath getting quicker like he couldn't quite believe what he was reading. His hands shook visibly. What is this?" he muttered, his voice growing tight. I leaned in a little closer, watching him carefully. "Proof," I said, each word deliberate and cold. His mother snatched the papers from Robert's hand, flipping through them in a frantic, almost desperate search for answers. Julia, who had been sitting silently up until now, grabbed one of the pages and let out a sharp gasp. "How did you—" Her voice trembled with disbelief. I gave a small, almost amused shrug. "I've known for a while now. I was just waiting for the right moment." I glanced at my watch, letting the silence hang in the air. "And guess what? That moment is now." Matt's father's face contorted with fury. His hands balled into fists on the table as he looked up at me, his voice trembling with rage. This is fake. There's no way you—" I tilted my head, my gaze unflinching as I met his anger with cool indifference. "Oh, but I did. And you just proved that you know exactly what's in those documents. Otherwise, why would you be so scared?" His eyes flickered with panic, and the room was deathly silent. Matt's uncle, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, watching the exchange with careful interest, leaned forward. He reached out and took a page from the folder, scanning it quickly. I could see his face go pale, his eyes widening as the truth hit him. His voice cracked when he finally spoke. "Robert, is this true?" Robert didn't answer right away. He just sat there, jaw clenched so tightly I thought his teeth might crack under the pressure. His knuckles were white from gripping the edge of the table. His mother, too, was trembling now, her hands shaking as she slowly set the papers down, staring at them like they might bite her. She lifted her gaze to meet mine, her face ashen. You have no idea what you've done," she whispered, her voice low and filled with a strange mix of fear and disbelief. I couldn't help but smile, just a little. It wasn't a smile of joy, but more of quiet satisfaction. "Oh, I think I do." My words were like a gentle push, a small yet definite assertion of power. The room fell into a heavy silence. The tension hung like a storm cloud, thick and suffocating. I watched as Matt's family sat frozen in their seats, each of them struggling to process the reality that their carefully constructed world was crumbling around them. Julia's face had gone pale. Her lips were pressed into a tight line and her fists were clenched so hard I thought her nails might break through her skin. She didn't know how to react, and that terrified her more than anything. His mother. Well, she looked like she'd swallowed something sour. Her expression was one of disbelief, but under it, there was a flicker of something else. Something closer to regret. Maybe even fear. Then there was Matt's father. Oh, Matt's father. He was visibly shaking with barely controlled rage. But they weren't the ones I was waiting for. Right on cue, the front door swung open. Matt stepped inside, his usual easygoing demeanor replaced by a slight confusion. He looked around the room, probably wondering why the tension was so thick. "Hey, Mom said there was some kind of..." He started, but his voice trailed off when he took in the scene before him. His eyes flicked quickly from the divorce papers on the table to the folder I'd just slammed down, clearly trying to make sense of it all. What the hell is going on?" Matt's mother jumped to her feet, her expression a little too eager, too controlled, like she was ready to do some damage control, and fast. She straightened her blouse, smoothing out any wrinkles in the fabric as if it would somehow fix the disaster unfolding. "Matt, sweetheart, sit down. We can explain." I didn't let her finish. "No, Matt," I said, my voice sharp but steady. I wasn't about to let anyone dictate this moment. Not anymore. "You should sit down. You're going to want to hear this." Matt froze, his gaze darting between me and his family. There was no turning back now. The air felt thick with tension, like everything was about to shift. I turned to face him fully, my heart pounding in my chest. But I wasn't going to back down. I had been through too much to be cowed by their games. "Your family tried to ambush me into signing divorce papers behind your back," I said, my voice calm, but with a quiet force that made the words hit like a punch. "But they didn't expect me to come prepared with my own paperwork." He frowned. "What?" I took a step closer, the room still frozen in silence, and tapped the folder I had brought with me. "That," I said, my voice steady, "is everything I found over the past few months. Bank statements, emails, hidden transfers, even property documents. You might want to take a good look." Matt hesitated, as if part of him didn't want to know. But curiosity and instinct won out. Slowly he reached for the folder, his hands already a little unsteady. He opened it, and with every page he turned, I watched the blood drain from his face. His shoulders tensed. His eyes darted across lines of figures and highlighted sections, disbelief setting in like a slow, creeping fog. Then came the first whisper. "Dad," he said so quietly I barely heard it. "What the hell is this?" His voice cracked at the edges, and his fingers stopped on a page, one with a long list of transfers tied to an unfamiliar account. His father didn't say a word. He didn't move. Just sat there, jaw clenched, staring straight ahead like a man who'd already resigned to the fallout. Matt turned to his mother, desperation now laced in his voice. "Mom," he said louder, more urgently. "Tell me this isn't real. Tell me this is some kind of mistake." But she wouldn't even look at him. Her hands were clenched in her lap, knuckles white, eyes fixed on the floor like she could will herself out of the moment. I folded my arms, watching the last of the illusion crumble around him. "It's real, Matt," I said gently but clearly. "Your dad has been siphoning money out of our joint accounts for years. They've been using you like a piggy bank, bailing out failed businesses, bad investments, and more than once covering Julia's debts. Every time they screwed up financially, they came to one place: your account." He looked at me like I'd slapped him, then back at the folder. His breathing picked up, uneven now, faster. He started flipping through the documents quicker, less careful, more frantic. His face twisted with a mix of shock and betrayal. "No, this can't be," he muttered. "This isn't possible." "Oh, it's not only possible," I said, stepping closer. "It's exactly what's been happening." I reached down and tapped a specific page near the back. "That right there?" I said, looking at him. "That's the mortgage paperwork. Your parents used our home, Matt, as collateral for a business loan. One of the shady ones. And they defaulted." I turned toward his father, my voice sharper now. "If I hadn't found out in time, if I hadn't frozen that account and contacted the bank, we would have lost everything. We were one signature away from foreclosure." Matt stared at the paper in front of him like it was written in a foreign language. His hands were shaking now, the edges of the document fluttering between his fingers. He looked up at his father, pain and disbelief warring in his expression. "You did what?" His father's jaw was clenched so tight I honestly thought he might crack a molar. But I wasn't done. Not even close. I looked Matt in the eye, my voice cold but steady. "Your family made me the villain, Matt. They painted me as the one holding you back, distracting you, when in reality, they were draining you behind your back. And now that I know the truth," I nodded toward the table. "They wanted me gone before I could tell you." That's when Julia snapped. "That's a damn lie," she shouted, her face red with fury. I turned to her slowly, completely unfazed. "Oh?" I said, one eyebrow raised. "You sure about that?" I reached into my bag again, calmly, like I'd done this 100 times, and pulled out another folder. This one was thinner, but far more damning. "Maybe you'd like to explain why you were texting your friend about how easy it was to trick Matt into signing financial documents without reading them?" Her face drained of color, then flushed bright red. "You—" "I have the screenshots," I said sharply, cutting her off. "Your messages, the ones where you laughed about how clueless Matt was, the ones where you bragged about getting your debts paid off, the bank transfers, the receipts, everything." I turned back to Matt. "Your family's not just manipulative, they're criminals." The room exploded, at least metaphorically. His father slammed his fist on the table so hard the coffee cups rattled. "That's enough," he growled, voice full of rage. I turned to him slowly, calmly. "No," I said. "You don't get to decide what's enough anymore." That shut him up. Matt was breathing hard now, his hands balled into fists at his sides, eyes locked on the people he thought he knew. His parents, his sister. His entire body was tense, like he was holding back a wave of emotion that threatened to break loose. Finally, his mother spoke. Her voice was shaky, but still had that familiar, patronizing tone, like she thought she could talk her way out of anything. "Matthew, sweetheart. Everything we did, everything, it was for you. We were helping you. Matt's head snapped in her direction. His voice when he responded was low but raw, like something inside him had cracked. Don't. Just that one word. But it silenced her instantly. Just don't, he said again, quieter this time. His mother flinched and shut her mouth. Her eyes dropped. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked afraid. And it wasn't of me. It was of her son finally seeing the truth. Because Matt wasn't their puppet anymore. He turned toward me then, and for the first time in a long, long while, I saw it. Clarity. Not confusion, not denial, not defensiveness. Just clear, painful, undeniable truth. He looked at the divorce papers they had tried to get me to sign. The ones they thought would solve all their problems. Then his eyes shifted to the folder I had placed on the table. The one that held everything they didn't want him to know. The one that, if acted on, would cut their strings for good. Matt took a slow, steady breath. And then, his voice, quiet but firm, cut through the room like a blade. What do we do? Then I smiled. Calm, steady, knowing. I slid the pen across the table toward Matt and said simply, "You sign my papers." It wasn't a command. It was an invitation, a turning point. Matt stared at the pen in front of him. His hands were still trembling, but his eyes, those sharp, betrayed, angry eyes, weren't on me. They were locked onto his parents. His mother had gone ghost white. Her lips pressed so tightly together they'd nearly disappeared. His father looked like he was holding himself together by a thread, his jaw twitching, fists clenched. And Julia? Julia looked like she was about to explode. I could feel it. How heavy the room had become. This wasn't just about documents anymore. If Matt signed, it would mean the end of his family's grip on him. Their access to his accounts, their little games behind his back, the illusion of control. They would all vanish. The empire they'd built on his back would come crumbling down. He reached forward, just slightly, fingertips brushing the pen. But then, Robert shot to his feet. So fast his chair didn't even have time to scrape the hardwood. "Don't you dare," he growled, voice low and threatening. A warning. An ultimatum. And the most desperate act of a man who realized, for the first time, he was losing. "You're not signing that." Matt's hand hovered above the paper, pen between his fingers. He hesitated. "But Oh, he's not signing it," I cut in, stepping forward. My tone was cool, sharp as glass. "And after this, we're pressing charges. Fraud, identity theft, financial manipulation. I've got enough evidence to keep a forensic accountant entertained for months." Robert's face turned a deep, dangerous shade of red. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. "You think you can walk into my house and threaten me?" he growled. I gave him a smirk. One that said, "I'm not afraid of you anymore." "Not a threat?" I replied. "Just facts." Then finally his mother broke the silence, her voice trembling, but still laced with that performative, guilt-tripping tone she'd perfected over the years. "Matthew, honey, please don't do this," she pleaded. "Think of your family. Think of everything we've done for you." Matt looked at her. Really looked at her. His jaw was tight. His eyes were glassy. But there was no hesitation in his voice. "You stole from me," he said quietly. But the steel beneath his words cut deeper than a shout ever could. "You lied. You almost let me lose my home." She reached out for his hand, but he pulled back like she'd touched an open wound. "Please," she whispered, barely audible now. "We love you." I let out a short laugh, one that didn't bother to hide the disgust. "Yeah, real loving. Nothing says we care like financial betrayal and emotional blackmail." Then I turned to Julia, who had been suspiciously quiet. Her arms were crossed, her eyes flicked from her parents to Matt, then finally landed on me. For once, her mouth was shut. I tilted my head. "What's wrong, Jules?" I asked, voice sweet with venom. "No passive-aggressive jabs? No eye rolls? Or are you too busy running through all the ways this could land you in court?" Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again, like a fish gasping on dry land. Finally, she looked at her father, then her mother, then back at me. And just like that, she cracked. "You want the truth?" she snapped, stepping toward me like she finally found her spine. I raised a brow. "Oh, please. I live for the truth." She sneered. "Fine. You were never one of us. You never belonged here. We tolerated you. That's it. The only reason my parents didn't kick you out years ago was because Matt was too stupid to see you." Matt's fists were clenched so tight his fingers looked bloodless. "Julia," he said, his voice a warning growl. There was fury in it, but also something else. Disbelief. Hurt. But she was too far gone to stop. "You're nothing without Matt," Julia spat, stepping toward me like she wanted to make it personal. "What are you going to do after this, huh? You think you'll just walk away and be fine? Please." She scoffed, like the very idea was laughable. Matt's success, his entire life came from us. His connections, ours. His job interviews, our referrals. His investments, our money. Take him away from this family and you'll see how fast the fairy tale ends. I tilted my head, amused, like I was watching someone dig their own grave with manicured hands. "Is that so?" I said calmly. Julia crossed her arms, standing a little taller, mistaking her boldness for power. "Yeah, so go ahead. Divorce him. Take your little victory lap. Do whatever it is you think this is." She smirked, eyes gleaming. "But when this all comes crashing down, and it will still be standing, you'll have nothing." A soft chuckle slipped from my lips. I didn't look away from her, not even for a second. Then, with a smooth motion, I reached into my bag. Her eyes flicked to my hand, and the smirk started to waver. "What is that?" she asked. I pulled out another folder, thicker than the last, heavier, deadlier. "Oh, Julia," I said, tapping the folder against my palm like a teacher about to hand out a test she knew they hadn't studied for. "Did you honestly think I wouldn't do my homework before walking into this ambush?" Then I tossed it onto the coffee table with a satisfying thump, right next to the divorce papers. The room stiffened. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, stepping back and raising a hand like I was unveiling a work of art. "Let's talk about embezzlement." Julia froze. Her posture snapped rigid. The color drained from her face like someone had flipped a switch. Robert turned toward her so fast it looked painful. "What?" he barked. Eyes locked on his daughter like she'd suddenly grown horns. I nodded slowly toward the folder. "Turns out your perfect little golden child has been bleeding your accounts dry for years. Clever little tricks, too. Fake vendor payments, wire transfers through dummy accounts, even reimbursing herself for business expenses that didn't exist." "That's a lie!" Julia shrieked, voice cracking as panic began to seep in. But I was already opening the folder, flipping through neatly organized tabs. "Really?" "Because I've got records, bank statements, flagged transactions, and a tidy little email chain from one of your accountants who got suspicious months ago." I pulled out a specific sheet and slid it across the table toward Matt. "And this," I said. "This one's the cherry on top. Recognize the name?" Matt picked it up, scanned the paper, and his face dropped. This is Derek." The name landed like a bomb. Everyone flinched. Julia's expression shattered. Her eyes went wide with panic, and her mouth moved before her brain could stop it. "Shut up!" Matt turned to Julia, his face slowly shifting from confusion to dawning realization. The words left his mouth barely above a whisper, but the weight of them was crushing. "The Derek you told me was just a friend." His voice shook. "The guy you swore you had nothing with?" The silence that followed was thick and suffocating. I let out a slow, incredulous laugh, shaking my head. "Wow," I said, my voice dripping with disbelief and amusement. "Not only did you steal from your own family, but you were funneling money to your side piece?" Julia's face turned an angry crimson. She lunged toward me, her hands outstretched as if she could strangle the truth out of the air. But Robert, her father, grabbed her arm firmly before she could take a step further. "Is this true?" Robert's voice was low, like the growl of an animal cornered. "Dangerous." Julia jerked her arm away, but she didn't speak. She couldn't. The guilt was written all over her face, clear as day. Robert's anger exploded. "You idiot!" he shouted, his voice cracking with fury. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" His mother's eyes went wide, her hands flying to her mouth as if she could somehow block the truth from sinking in. "Julia, please, tell me this isn't true." But Julia didn't answer. She stood frozen like she was trying to wish herself out of the situation. Her face pale, her eyes filled with a mix of shame and rage. Oh, this was good. This was the moment I had been waiting for. Matt turned to me, his expression changing from shock to something more. Something that looked like the first real spark of clarity in a long time. "How long have you known?" His voice was tight, his shoulders slumping. I shrugged, casual as ever. "A couple of months. Wanted to make sure I had all the facts before I brought it up to you. Figured it'd be better to have everything lined up." Matt ran a hand through his hair, his breath coming out in a frustrated huff. "Jesus Christ!" His voice was raw. His whole world was falling apart, and I could see the weight of it settle on him. Meanwhile, Robert was frantically flipping through the evidence, his fingers trembling with a mix of rage and disbelief. His face was darkening by the second, and it was clear. He was no longer the calm, controlling figure he had once been. This is a disaster." "Yep," I said with a smile that was almost too cheerful for the situation. "And now? It's your disaster. Congratulations." I turned back to Matt, steady now. My tone was businesslike, but there was a thread of finality in it that couldn't be ignored. "Sign the papers." My words sliced through the tension like a knife. "Let's end this." He hesitated, looking around at the wreckage of his family. His mother, broken and sobbing in her chair. His father, shattered by his own actions. And Julia, who was shaking with fury. Her face contorted in a desperate mix of anger and fear. Without another word, Matt picked up the pen. The last thing he needed to do to cut the chains that had bound him to them for so long. He signed. Just like that, the final break was made. The end of their control over him. Robert sat back, his breath ragged, his knuckles white as he gripped the table like it was the only thing stopping him from crumbling. His eyes locked on Matt with an almost murderous intensity. "You're going to regret this," he spat through clenched teeth. I leaned in slightly, giving him a cold smile. "Oh, I don't think so." With that, I scooped up my folder, took Matt's hand, and walked straight out the front door, leaving behind the wreckage of their perfect little empire. They were still sitting there, stunned and scrambling, as their carefully controlled world crumbled around them. The moment Matt signed those papers, everything changed. I walked out with my head held high. Matt was right beside me, finally seeing the truth for what it was. And his family? They were left behind, sitting in their living room like the end credits had just rolled on a movie they thought they were directing. But that was just the beginning. Because revenge, real, satisfying, soul-cleansing revenge, isn't loud. It's calculated, it's slow, and oh, it's deliciously public. Phase 1. Financial ruin. The first thing I did was pass everything I had, every document, every shady transaction, every damning message, over to my lawyer and a forensic accountant. And guess what? When you play fast and loose with money the way they did, the IRS takes a very personal interest. Within weeks, Matt's father's business was under a microscope. Fake invoices, unreported income, loans that never should have been approved. All of it unraveled. And it wasn't just him. See, they'd been so arrogant, so sure of their own untouchability, that they put up their Charleston mansion as collateral for one of their failed ventures. And when the numbers didn't add up, the bank came knocking. Their mansion, gone. Luxury cars, towed away. The legacy family business, dismantled by lawsuits and back taxes. It was a full-blown collapse. A mutual friend told me Matt's mother had an actual breakdown when the bank showed up to seize the house. Sat on the front porch sobbing while the moving trucks pulled away with their antiques and heirlooms. I wish I could say I felt bad. But I didn't. Not even a little. Phase 2. Julia's fall from grace. Ah, Julia, the family's golden girl, the one who always walked around like the world owed her something just for existing. She truly believed she was untouchable. Spoiler alert, she wasn't. Once I handed over all the juicy details, the embezzled funds, the fake invoices, the sneaky little payments to her not-so-secret boyfriend Derek, the authorities took it from there. And unlike before, there was no daddy to sweep things under the rug this time. Because, well, her father's empire was already burning to the ground. No money, no favors to call in, no one left to protect her. She was officially charged: fraud, money laundering, and theft. I won't lie. When I got the news she'd been arrested, I popped a bottle of champagne and toasted to karma doing her job. Of course, Julia tried to pull the poor me card, played the victim like her life depended on it. But karma? She doesn't negotiate. I made sure her employer found out everything, every dirty detail. Her firing was swift and public. No references, no sympathetic HR manager whispering about second chances. And Derek? Her little sidekick in heels and hair gel? He bailed the second things got messy. Poof. Gone. Left her to clean up the wreckage solo. Last I heard, Julia was working a dead-end job she hated, drowning in debt, and completely iced out by the high society crowd she used to flaunt like some VIP badge. And honestly, couldn't have happened to a more deserving person. Good riddance. Phase 3. The divorce and the freedom. Matt and I wrapped up the divorce pretty quickly. There was no drama, no drawn-out battle, just signatures and closure. I walked away with exactly what I deserved. My share of the assets, the house they tried to gamble away, and most importantly, peace. Matt wasn't totally innocent in all of this. He'd let his family manipulate him for years. Blind loyalty, constant excuses, and zero boundaries. But I'll give him this. Once the truth came crashing down, he didn't run from it. He didn't fight me. He didn't beg. He just looked at the wreckage, looked at me and said, "I'm sorry." And then he walked away. From his toxic parents, from Julia, from the illusion they'd built around him. And me. I took my settlement, moved to a new city and started over. I built a life that was mine, entirely mine. One that didn't come with strings, secrets, or sabotage. A life filled with peace, growth, and freedom. Final nail in the coffin. But before I rode off into my well-earned sunset, I had one last thing to do. I made sure the truth didn't stay locked in that living room. Every socialite brunch, every black tie gala, every business mixer they used to waltz into with smug little smiles. Gone. Their elite circle knew everything. I didn't even have to do much. A few whispers, a few forwarded documents, a little truth sprinkled into the right hands. It spread like wildfire. Suddenly, no one wanted to return their calls. The doors that used to fly open for them were slammed shut. The family name that once carried weight, now it just brought scandal and embarrassment. They weren't respected anymore. They were infamous. And me, I was thriving. See, revenge isn't always about lashing out. Sometimes it's about stepping back, letting the truth do its work, and watching people crumble under the weight of their own choices. And lucky me, I had front row seats. The end.